Sculpture Fest 2011 featured artist Roger Goldenberg. Visual improvisational jazz.
You know, I think if you start wrestling with the art, it kills it. So it's an improvisation, you know. I mean, that's why I've been calling my work visual jazz. It's a parallel art form to musical jazz. And the language of description is very similar. It's the same, really. And there's rhythm and movement and timbre and tone. The color, musicians are always talking about notes having a certain color. So I'll roll out the canvas and then just get on it, and I'll start making shapes, you know, and just, you know, you can walk on it, and so it's just a very gestural kind of, you know. 2 or 3 moves into the painting, and it becomes its own, you know, it's no longer like in a fetal stage. It's a being of some sort that, you know, has been born, and then it has its needs. Well, one of the things I was trying to, I guess, replicate in a way, because those are shapes. I've tried painting oil paintings on stretched canvases that were rectangles, and I don't know if it was my exuberance or what, but I would tend to paint the whole area. And I really am most moved by shapes. So, because I feel like life can't be described by a rectangle. It's just, you know, it's not the way life is. So early on, as I became an artist, I realized how much time, I think that learning to embrace the artistic process also brought forward the idea of how much human beings, how much time we spend trying to control. And I think, you know, to be a successful artist, you really have to relinquish control and really just be immersed in process. And with all of the skills that you've developed, you just have to trust that the result, there will be a result, and it will be satisfying. So moving from the rectangle to shapes, I'm always looking for, it's always a metaphor for life. Whatever I do seems to be some sort of a metaphor for life. That's how I feel about it. So the shapes represent a much more organic feel about how life is. It's not linear, it's not rectangular. Angles really don't have much to do with it. When you start really looking in nature, the shapes are very irregular. I mean, there is symmetry and patterning, but when you start amassing them like in leaves of trees, or how trees butt against one another and their shapes against the skyline, or clouds against the black background of blue, you start seeing how my paintings really are influenced by nature. I was traveling between Lebanon, you know, to Portsmouth, where my studio is, and all across Route 101 there are all these birch saplings along the highway. And I was remembering Robert Frost's poem, Swinging from Birches. And so I thought, oh yeah, of course, you know, birch bends. And there's delight for me in the fact that I like that they're ephemeral. They're not something made out of bronze. They're not something that's like mankind muscling its permanent impact on the, you know, on the scene. It's not welded steel. It's something that will slowly deteriorate, but the elegance, it's watercolor paper lashed to birch, and sort of the delicacy of the engineering involved, you know, that there's these delicate little parts that, working in concert with each other, stand up to some of the huge forces of nature.
Each of the paintings is really colorful, except one.
Right. Yeah, it was as white. It's kind of odd. It's so yellow, but it's more of a moon than a. It's a place where people can project their painting onto it, you know. And it's sort of a peace symbol for me, without
being, I had a professor that would have said, without being obvious, but, it's just sort of a subtle, quiet spot that hasn't been subjected to my influence too much, other than just the coatings of the varnish. It was my sister that said, "Oh, it's the moon next to the, sort of the inverse of a starry sky, the blue and the white." But I think of it as peace and a place where someone can have the opportunity to kind of fill in or wonder what they would put there. Or just wonder. That's good too. Just take time out.
These seem like little solos.
Yeah, or little quintets or quartets, I guess, and trios.
Oh yeah, when they're put together. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So
Although the groupings are kind of random, I like randomness is something I'm pretty comfortable with. It was more important. The shapes of the branches were more important. I was trying to pair up shapes of the branches that would be appropriate for each grouping, and I figured the paintings would take care of themselves. Yeah, it's all improvisation. And the paintings that are typical of me are complete improvisations from beginning to end. They're like a jam session. So this is now a jam session because they're all going to dance and move however they want or can, and it's sort of out of my hands. A different tune every day. Being featured artist, I had more say in the matter than other artists. So, and I think when Charlotte saw the scale, and she knows the intensity with which I've been making these. It's been over a 6-month project. So she just thought, oh my goodness, it needs the whole space. And Charlotte's also talked a lot about communicating with her deceased daughter. She was very connected with her daughter, Polly, and that, there was that living connection and then the spatial connection, the house up on the hill, down to the farm. And now that since Polly has died, there's this other place, and there's still that dialogue and connection. And so this was sort of thinking of connecting the two places. And so to have the whole field and have it wend its way up through this whole field towards the hilltop was very cool. Spiritual is one thing and religious, I think, is another. And but I'm always intrigued with the idea of energy and what we do with our energy and what it does when it's released into the world, the universe. So, whether there's life, multiple lives or not, heaven, hell, and all of that, I think that the question mark for me is, where does our energy go? I believe in the collective unconscious, so I believe that whatever the human experience was from our past we carry in us. So the language of these, I think, is rather universal. My connection to the Tibetan prayer flags is more with the idea that by creating, whether it's a prayer, which those are, they also have color, or these, they're sending a positive force in the universe. And painters like myself believe that paintings can change the world.